And also to the London Small Business Enterprise, as well as especially to Vicky, who made this happen for us. We went through extensive testing and checking things out before showing up today. So I really hope that you get as much value as I'm trying to share with you. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Like I said, thank you for being here, but I cannot see your questions. However, as we go along, I am going to be asking you to type things in. So I'm going to have Vicky interrupt me and tell me that. Tell me your questions as we go, if that's okay with you. As well, actually, as we get started, maybe the participants could type in what their business is, just so I have an idea of what we're doing. And even if you don't have a business, if you're just kind of dipping your toes and you're not sure where you're going with this, I'm going to invite you to actually make up a business that you're going to looking at this presentation through that lens for today, okay? Because it's going to make things a lot more concrete for you if you're actually trying to apply it to yourself. So take a moment and please type in what is your business. And just in a second, I'm going to ask Vicky to read that out to me. I will be drawing on examples of some of the businesses that I've worked with before or people have asked me questions before. So hopefully you can tie that in, listen to that example and tie that into your own business or how you might want to approach things. Always take it as a jump off point, not a concrete, this is what you do, because you never know, like you might have a much better idea just from hearing somebody else's mediocre idea. Okay, so as we're going through, Vicky, did anybody type in their businesses?
Yes, we do have some. We have teaching and learning. We have another one on burnout prevention.
Mm-hmm.
And wellness strategist and coach. We have another one on children's book publishing. Financial services. Ability to work, ergonomics consulting, and product sales to help employers and individuals to ensure they are comfortable and safe and accommodated for individual needs at work. We have home renovation businesses, educational, looking to teach French online, money coaching, business education, bilingual services. Yeah.
I love it. That's it's a really good group. And we have a couple of kind of clusters that everybody can learn from each other. Like I said, I will be actually calling you out. I will be inviting people to speak up or to rather type their answers in. So please start thinking about how you're going to apply this as you go along. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Maryna Shkvorets. If you want, you can visit my website or join me on LinkedIn for my newsletter. And I am, first and foremost, I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm also an executive public speaking coach. And the real reason I'm here is that when all of this pandemic stuff started happening and I started, you start reading about businesses and you kind of worry about your own and you worry about the people around you. And I started thinking, what is it that I can do for other people and for myself? But more than anything, I was thinking, what can I offer? And personally, I work with other entrepreneurs as well to help them pitch their businesses through selling on stage. But I personally use webinars to onboard my own clients. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to reach out to small business enterprises and I'm going to show them, basically pull back the curtain and show what it is that I do and how I use webinars to reach my clients. So that is why I'm here. Here's what you're going to walk away with in this workshop. By the end of the workshop, you will have a step-by-step blueprint and concrete tools and strategies to create your own engaging and value-packed webinar and use it to get clients. Okay, so actually, as we're going along, I hope that you're taking notes. And actually, I do believe that Vicky is recording this so that in case you missed anything, you can go back to it. I hope that you're taking notes because you will have more or less a structure to get started with and create a webinar by the end of the day, hopefully. But before we go into it, I want to go through a little thought exercise. Let's pretend that you get an email from, let's say, an accountant, and it says, oh, hey, you must be getting ready for tax season. I just wanted to let you know that I specialize in helping small business owners minimize their taxes. Why don't you give me a call? Oh, and if you know anybody who needs an accountant, feel free to forward this email. What would be your reaction to that? It's not a bad email, right? But what's your reaction? Is it A, oh, great, I was just about to look for a new accountant, so this is very dip in this? Or is it B, no, who are you? Why are you emailing me? And I don't need an accountant. Or C, oh yeah, that sounds like a pretty good idea. Maybe I'll check them out when I get around to it. So just, if you don't mind, type in your answer. What do you think? What would be your initial reaction to that? And if Vicky, you don't mind telling me what is the majority of the responses?
Okay, so we're getting B's, get your own clients, C's, 2 C's, 2 B's so far.
Yeah. For me personally, I would probably say C, right? I'd be like, oh, okay, I should probably look into it or check them out, but you probably just never get around to it. Now, let's say you get another email, a different scenario. You get an email that says, hi, you must be getting ready for tax season. I'll actually be hosting a free webinar sharing 3 overlooked ways small business owners can save money on taxes. It's on Friday at noon. I'd love for you to join and let me know if you or anyone else is interested. What would be your reaction in this case? And you don't have to type it in, just think about what is your reaction. So if it was me, if I were to get that email, whether or not I'm kind of looking for an accountant at the moment, I would probably think, oh, actually, this is really helpful. And I would think, what do I have to lose by checking this out? And on top of that, I would probably forward this to some people I know. And I would definitely, if I'm even the least bit interested, I would schedule it into my calendar, right? So that is why webinars are so much more effective at getting clients. Here are a few other reasons. First of all, it's time to pivot. Everything is moving online, and it just makes sense for your business or for your onboarding of clients to move online as well. You get to get in front of people who are already interested in the problem that you solve. And even if you don't think that your business needs a digital presence, if it's something that's not really online, it just might mean that you're getting ahead of the competition by starting to move to a virtual audience. Also, it can be way more convenient or even mandatory to start reaching out to your virtual audience, right? Just in case for whatever reason, you're not allowed to leave the house. But not even during a pandemic, it's actually way more, for me, it has been way more convenient. I have 2 small kids, and as much as I'm so grateful to be invited to things, it's always like downtown during rush hour, or I have to take the toll highway. So it's always, and I have to figure out what to do with my kids at that time. So it's always extremely inconvenient for me to go places these days, whereas presenting virtually is much easier. And it also gives you a much broader audience. So for example, right now I'm in Ontario, Mississauga. I don't know where you guys are, but it gives you a broader audience for people you can speak to. Actually, personally, I am Canadian, but most of my clients are American. Again, because they find me online and we just have virtual meetings in this way. And here's one other thing you need to know about webinars. The buying psychology is just different in the virtual world. Okay. First of all, a static product page is just not enough. You have to invite people to come to you. You have to do the work. It's no longer if you build it, they will come. You have to be a little bit more active. Next is people want to kind of do their research and build a relationship, get to know what you're all about before they commit to making a purchase, especially if it's a bigger purchase. Also, people are a little bit more sensitive about being sold to too early, right? So I don't know where you live, you guys get these duct cleaning calls, but at this point, just out of principle, even if I needed one, I wouldn't go with it because it's just so intrusive and presumptuous to get the call of, hey, do you need duct cleaning, right? So people are sensitive about being sold to too early. They kind of want to establish a relationship first. And lastly, people's attention spans, as well as their social graces, are just shorter online. You have to work to keep people interested, keep people engaged, keep people hooked, and get them to commit. Right? So for example, if this was a live meeting or a one-on-one meeting, you wouldn't even think about, going on your phone and checking different tabs or even walking away. Whereas online, it's my job, I consider it my job to keep you hooked in and keep you interested and keep you paying attention. By the way, a webinar is not just a demo of your product. So whatever it is that you sell, it's not just you talking about your product, and it's not just a sales pitch, although you can and should have both of those things. In order to get to that point, you need to get people to commit to you first, if that makes sense. But I do want you to think of a webinar as win-win. I want you to think of it as part of prospecting and not necessarily part of closing. And I want you to think of it as establishing and building a relationship. In terms of the win-win, sometimes people say, well, I don't want to put in all of this work just for a maybe, right? And I can sort of understand where people are coming from, but you have to understand that the people on the other side are giving you their attention. And that's not worthless. That's worth something, right? So webinars are definitely a win-win. You're giving away value, they're giving you their attention. But I don't want you to forget that your ultimate goal is to gain this audience as clients. Okay, so what are we going to cover today? Today we're going to cover the webinar structure, some messaging elements, and other FAQ and tools and strategies that are a little bit miscellaneous. But before I do that, I'm going to ask you, have you ever attended a webinar with a pitch? So not like this one, because this is more of a training. There's not a pitch at the end, but one with a pitch, right? Where somebody teaches you something and then they ask you for your business. Can you type in yes if you've ever attended one like that? Vicky, am I getting any yeses, or is this going to be brand new to people?
Yes, we are getting yeses.
Okay, so you guys, perfect. If you have attended a webinar like that, you probably understand the structure. More or less, it's the intro, the content, and the pitch, right? That's the basic structure for most webinars. But if you can follow that structure, that's not the magic formula. That's really just the tip of the iceberg. The structure doesn't have that much to do with the webinar itself, okay? The other 90%, the other bigger part are you have to get your audience excited to solve their problem. I call these the messaging elements. Get them excited to solve their problem. Establish your own authority and address their pain points, okay? So let's get into each one of these. I don't want to look at the structure first. I want to look at the messaging elements first, right? So again, the messaging elements is get them excited about solving the problem, establish your authority, and address their pain points. And it doesn't always fall into a structure. You have to kind of feed each part of your webinar with one of these messaging elements, right? So each part of your webinar should address at least one of these elements at each time. Okay, so let's get started with how do you get excited about solving the problem? Okay, so first of all, I want you to ask yourself, take 30 seconds to ask yourself, what does it look like when your client's problem is solved? What does it look like? And I'm actually going to be asking you to type this in a little bit later in the presentation because we're going to take a small break. So take a moment and actually ask yourself, what does it look like when your client's problem is solved? And as you're asking yourself, I want you to, first of all, be as specific as possible, right? Use little analogies or examples. Be as specific as possible here. I want you to, if it's applicable, use real numbers. So if somebody is a business coach, if your business coaching got somebody a certain type of revenue, use real numbers, right? And if you feel like you can offer that to somebody else as well, use real numbers. If you can increase the number of hours somebody gets back in a day, use those real numbers. Be very visual and vivid here. Right? So as you're thinking about the problem solved, see where you can make it a little bit more visual, a little bit more like emotional, or help them understand what it looks like. I want you to apply contrast before and after. That's very helpful in helping people see, I used to be super tired because somebody's a health coach, I believe. I used to be super tired and I would just want to watch Netflix. And now I can't wait to go for a walk in the evening, right? And use words like imagine if or what if, okay? So thinking about the problem solved, use those a few elements. So while we're doing this, you should be doing this for your own problem, but I want to show you what it looks like for somebody else. Well, let's use an example of a web designer. First of all, let's answer what problem does she solve and how can she get you excited to solve your problem? Okay, can maybe one or two people, if you don't mind, type in what you think is the answer. What problem does she solve and how can she get you excited to solve your problem? And if after the first or second, if Vicky, if you don't mind reading that to me while I take a coffee break.
Sure, Maryna, we're here waiting.
Anybody?
Okay, so creativity, excited to reach audience.
Mm-hmm.
Create the website website and save time.
Yeah.
We have another one, personal connection. If she can promise a great user experience on the website,
Right.
a website that is attractive, pulls people in, has great content, good SEO.
Right. Okay. So some people are already looking at the numbers and getting very specific about things. Okay. So just saying something like, imagine having a professional looking website. That's not really enough anymore, right? You want to get into those specifics, right? So one way you could talk about the problem that she solves is, let's say she's going to get you more traffic, right? Let's say you have an online store and she's going to get you more traffic, right? So she could say something like, what if your website all of a sudden went to 10,000 views a day? Right? So we're getting specific there, right? And get people excited. Like, how would that change your business? How would that change your business? Imagine if, right? We're getting people to picture it. And you could draw a contrast. Let's say, instead of getting a sale here and there, all of a sudden you could start getting, a few sales a day, and you could start introducing new products. And how would that change your business from now on? You see how right now we're inviting a little bit more, we're making it more visual, we're getting people excited to solve their problem. Another one could be, let's say you don't want to create and maintain your own website. You just don't have the time for it. So she could approach it in this way. She could say, let's say by the end of the week, you have a professional website that's just up and ready to go, and any kind of update just takes an email from you. How many hours would you gain back? Right? So you're getting your client to kind of fill in those gaps and get excited. Oh my God, what could I be doing with that time if I didn't have to constantly maintain my website and check my comments and check this and check that, right? So again, you're getting the person excited. Okay? So that's your first messaging element. Get people excited to have their problem solved. I hope that makes sense. Right? As we go, I want you to think about it for your own business as well. Next one, your authority. Establish your authority. So I want you to demonstrate why your clients should work with you over somebody else. Okay? And your authority is not necessarily, that you're the best of the best or the top or have the top accolades or you know more than anybody else. It could be there's something that's special about you that other people just don't have. And everybody has that something special about them. Okay? Especially if you're working one-on-one with somebody, you want to display that you can kind of jive together. Okay, so here are a few examples. You could use testimonial or social proof to establish your authority. You could talk about accolades or awards. You could talk about your expertise or experience or your education. You could use your unique voice and your personality. You could talk about your story, which kind of describes why you're passionate, right? Feed that in, why you're so passionate about what you do. For example, I believe we had a health coach. So if you could have a story about how you went from one end to another, right? That could feed into why you're so passionate, right? And get people kind of see themselves working with you, right? That's what establishing your authority is all about, right? By the way, this should be relevant to your niche. Okay, so don't use all of those. Don't just, and I'm this, and I'm this, and I'm this, and I'm this. This has to be relevant to your niche. So just choose one or two things and make it relevant to your niche. Okay, so for example, I said I am an executive public speaking coach. So I tend to mention that I've been featured in Forbes. That's usually creates a certain social proof to my audience, right? With certain clients, I might talk about, my education or where else I've worked or things of that nature, right? You don't have to do everything. I generally try to use testimonials as well. You don't have to do everything, but it has to be relevant to your niche. Okay, so let's look at an example of a home stager. First of all, how can she establish her authority? I want you to take a second to think about that. What can she do to establish her authority? And also, how would having a niche market help her? And again, if you guys don't mind, take a moment and type in a couple of answers. And if Vicky, if you don't mind reading those out to me, and we're going to use that as a bounce off point to dig in a little bit deeper. And again, I will take my coffee break.
Sure. Waiting for responses.
So what can she say to establish her authority, and how would having a niche market help her? Remember, a niche market is that segment. It's like not everybody, it's like those specific people that you might work with.
Okay, so we have provides happiness to families over X years.
Mm-hmm.
Houses sold after she staged them.
Yeah.
Her portfolio.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, if she has any celebrity clients, even local celebrities or well-known businesses, that could
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
Before and after pictures of completed projects. Before and after pictures, some high-profile clients or companies that she has worked with.
Yeah. It
Sales price.
sounds like maybe we have a home stager there who's like, of course I do these things. Okay. And how would
Niche.
having a niche market?
Yeah,
And
so we have niche business professionals who need a sanctuary when they come home.
oh,
Okay.
okay, I love it. Okay, so you guys are really on the ball with this. Some of the other places, they're like, oh, I don't know, maybe a testimonial, right? I love it. You guys are really on the ball with this, right? If you've worked with somebody who's high profile, for example, you could, name drop them, so to say. If before and after pictures or having a portfolio, that's a really good way to do it. If you have testimonials, definitely always collect testimonials or something along those lines. Definitely, show those to people, or reference letters, things of that nature. In terms of having a niche market, I like somebody said, like, working with professionals who just don't really have the time for this. Another idea, so you could address that. You could say, I understand you don't have the time for this. I will completely take care of it for you. Another way to do it, let's say you work with just smaller homes. That's your niche. You just work with smaller homes. I have a small townhouse, right? So if I were to ever sell my home and I needed a home stager, it would make me feel better to know they're experienced in that, and they're not going to bring in this, gigantic production that, I might not have the budget for. It would make me feel a little bit more comfortable to know that it's somebody who specializes in small homes. Or let's say she might work with, like, let's say single men, for example, and she could just use that to cut to the chase and say, listen, the way you decorate your home is not going to cut it for a sale, right? Or, she could, address or try to target moms and say, listen, I completely understand, use the pain points of completely understand that, by the time you leave the house in the morning, everything has been turned upside down. So I want to be able to help you to create, to make it look like a sanctuary, like somebody said. So I hope that makes sense. Like, having a niche market, you can kind of talk to them in a way that they want to hear, or talk about the things that matter to them. Okay, so that was the last point, the second point of establishing your authority. And the last one is pain points. So pain points is probably the most important part of your messaging, right? And it's actually really important in the sales process as well. The pain points are those little inner battles that your client is going through, okay? So it's not necessarily the problem that they have, it's those additional additional little thoughts that they have, fears or frustrations that they have around the problem, if that makes sense, okay? So the clearer you can articulate that you understand those problems and you want to offer them relief for it, the clearer you can articulate it, the more likely their ears will perk up and they'll listen and they'll kind of want to engage with you about it. Okay, so let me give you a few examples. Like I said, pain points are not really the same as the problem that you solve. Okay, so for example, well, I'll give you an example a little bit later, but it's not necessarily the same as the problem that you solve. Okay, it's the fears that keep your clients up at night, or the little frustrations or excuses that they make around what you offer. If you can show your clients that you get those pain points and you can offer them relief, they're way more likely to listen to you. And so, like we were talking about just a little bit earlier about the home stager, like I said, I'm a mom with 2 small kids. So my pain points are the fact that everything just gets messy within like 5 minutes. So if she could address those pain points and be like, don't worry about it, I'll take care of everything. I'll make it easy for you to keep up. That's her addressing my pain points. If she says, listen, I completely understand that everything just, goes to hell as soon as everybody enters the house, right? My ears would perk up if she could offer me relief for that. I hope that makes sense as a pain point. It's not necessarily the problem of, I need to sell my home. Okay, so I want to look at an example of a landscaper. What are his clients' pain points? And like I said, pain points are not necessarily the same as the problem, right? So the problem could be that your landscaper will help you create a beautiful garden or something along those lines. But what are the pain points for a landscaper? If I can have you guys type something in, and again, Vicky, if you don't mind reading those out to me when they're ready.
Sure, Maryna. Okay, We have some responses. And we have weed, not a lot of budget or a lot of room, annoying clients, ugly outdoors, don't know a plant from a weed, how to make a garden beautiful, don't have time.
See, I would argue, so I want to dig in a little bit deeper on those. So that's just the start of your pain points. I want to dig in even deeper. Okay, so let me give you
Sorry, Maryna. We have another response. Maybe what you're looking for. Seasonality of job.
Right. Okay. Right. I'm talking, the landscaper is the business owner, and what are the landscaper's clients' pain points? Just to clarify on that, right? So, not the landscaper's pain points. But let's just dig in a little bit deeper. Somebody said something along the lines of not having the time. So maybe you do want a beautiful garden, but you just don't have the time. And you could dig into that pain points. Like, every time you come out, it just reminds you that you have so much to do. You still have to weed your garden. You still have to, fix up your patio stones, right? That's you digging into those pain points a little bit more than, you don't you want a beautiful garden. Another one could be, again, we're talking about the clients. Another one could be, a lot of people, when they hire a contractor, they have the pain point of, they've heard those stories of, somebody doesn't show up, or they go over budget, or they take too long, they take way longer than the estimate, or something along those lines, right? So you could talk about those pain points, those little inner fears or frustrations around hiring a landscaper, and say, I completely understand why you might be hesitant, but I'm with you, I've heard these stories, but I'm not like that, and here's the proof why, right? Does that make sense as a pain point? Another pain point could be embarrassment, right? So like I said, I live in a townhouse, but sometimes, I would hear somebody say, oh, don't you want to trim that bush a little bit, or something along those lines? And I get a little bit embarrassed about that. So again, if you could, or my husband might be like, isn't it, don't you think that's ugly, or something like that? Don't you want to plant some flowers there, or something along those lines, right? So again, that's a pain point. I get like a little bit embarrassed, so that would be a pain point for me. Does that make sense as a pain point?
Yeah, Maryna, and we did have those type of responses after. Now that you were talking, they were saying embarrassed about the garden because she wants in. They don't know what they want. Depend on you for expertise. Every time you get into your gorgeous garden, your back hurts. I'm here to care for your garden the way you desire.
Right.
And says keeping up with the neighbors. They have a great garden already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, now you have to dig in a little bit deeper with those pain points, and kind of say those little frustrations, or those little, that little inner monologue that's going through people's heads around your product. Okay. So, when we talk about pain points, this is what they often look like. They could be financial, right? So if you can offer somebody, if you know that somebody's spending a lot of money on something, or, for example, they're spending a lot of money on servicing their debt for something like that. If you could kind of talk about the financial pain points of what it, how it feels to have that debt and all that stuff, that's a pain point. It could be strategic, right? So for example, if you offer a software, and that your clients, they have to have like 3-4 different softwares, and, it costs a lot of money to keep everything up, and they don't integrate well. If you could explain, listen, this is going to take just a week to implement, and everything's going to be super seamless, but you can get into the pain point, like you have to always hire IT or call somebody in IT to integrate it, or you have to look it up and it takes hours, right? So that would be you digging into a pain point. Another one could be social or professional. Right? That could be like the fear of judgment from your boss, or fear of missing out, right? So that's something that, because I work in the executive space, that's something that I often use, right? People talk about, people that work with me talk about, when I talk to my boss, like I feel like they're always kind of looking down at me. I use that pain point when I speak to my potential clients. When it comes to pain points, don't guess. Okay, so that's very important. Don't guess. I want you to find out your actual clients' pain points by interviewing past and present clients and prospects. Again, it's not about what did you like, what did you dislike, but it's more about like dig into like what what were you thinking every time you looked at your garden, for example? What were you thinking every time, you had to approach your boss, right? Kind of dig into it a little bit more to uncover the actual pain points. You could look at your target market communities, right? So some people have, Facebook groups or something along those lines, or in networking, right? People kind of talk about the same thing over and over, and that's usually a pain point. Yeah, especially if they're complaining about something. Ask professionals in related fields, right? So for example, if you're a home stager, you could ask a real estate agent. What are people always complaining about that you can kind of mention that you can solve, or you can try to solve? And think back, for some of you, think back to when you were your own target client, okay? So some of you probably had to go through something, and then you realize, listen, this service doesn't exist, so I'm going to make it. You were probably frustrated about something not existing. So that's you going back to when you were your own target client, right? Think back about those things that actually frustrated you. Okay, so right now I'm actually going to turn it over to you guys. I'm going to go through 6 questions. I want you to take maybe a few seconds to quickly answer it in your head, and then I'll put all 6 up, and I will give you a few minutes to actually type your answers in, okay? So question 1, who is your client and what problem do you solve? Okay. 2, vividly describe what a problem solved looks like and use details, numbers, visuals, feelings, etc. 3, do you have a niche market that's like a subcategory of your target market? And what do you know about them that other people don't, or that makes them different from other people? 5, how can you appeal your authority or to your niche market, with whether that's expertise, experience, personality, or just a different approach? And what pain points does your ideal client have? Or if you don't know that, where can you start to research their pain points? Okay, so I'm actually going to give you a few minutes to answer these on your paper or on a doc. These are really good questions to just, for messaging in general. If you want, just take maybe a screenshot in order to have that. And I'm going to take maybe 3 minutes, and then I'll exit out of here and I'll look at your responses along with Vicky. So if I exit the presentation, I will be able to see them. Okay, so take a couple of minutes and start responding, maybe typing them in, or maybe just writing it out. And the ones you're more comfortable with, start typing those in. I'm actually going to put on some thinking music for you guys. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, that's an ad.
Maryna,
Yeah.
not sure if you're able to see, but on the Q&A, some are suggesting Wagner, not a good background for thinking.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. It's
And
funny who
another one
knows
is
who that
saying
is.
Chaplin. Yeah, another one is saying Chaplin, please.
Okay, sorry. You know what? I'll stop it then. I didn't put it on in case that's like, you're not you needed to think. But okay, fine, no problem.
But we have some responses already. You have some responses up. Are you able to see the Q&A?
Speak a little bit or expand on a response a little bit. If I think now is probably a good time, if you don't mind, Vicky.
Okay, sure. All right, 1 second. Okay, so we have the first response. It says ability at work. It says clients are employers, insurers, individuals. Problem to solve is to prevent injury, discomfort, accommodate the work or the workstation to individuals' needs to prevent discomfort and disability costs to the person and financial.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then we have another response. Translation is usually a requirement and people hire me when they already need the service. I don't have to market as I translate quite a few different fields from retail to nonprofit. I enjoy nonprofit work most, says anti-violence work, for example. But I have a lot of experience in retail, clothing description translations. I have translation experience, no degree, and I am also a writer and former journalist. Okay. And
Can I interrupt you and speak to the translator? One, I mean, I really like your description so far. One way to kind of look at it is, if you were to ask some people about problems they solve, maybe they can't find somebody, and again, use this as a jump off point. Maybe this isn't necessarily true, right? But maybe they can't find somebody, or maybe they don't have somebody with kind of a sense of humor, or somebody who makes it interesting, right? Because as a former journalist, you know how to make things interesting as well as just a direct translation. So that's something to potentially play to.
okay. That same individual continued commenting and said, I am very good at creative. Sorry, it keeps sliding up. Yeah, I'm very good at creative work, unsure of my pain point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, did you say unsure of your pain points?
That's right.
Unsure. Sorry, I thought you said I am sure. So again, first of all, the first question is, who could you interview about pain points, or where can you start looking into it? Right. But another, like, a way to think about it is like, maybe your client needs somebody who has a bit more personality in their, when they translate those little descriptions on their tags, right? So if you could kind of play to that might be a a pain point that you're addressing. But I obviously I don't know for sure.
Okay. All right. So another response for question number 1. Okay. Young and older adults who would like to learn a second language, perhaps for travel, perhaps to communicate with friends, perhaps for work. People who didn't learn in back when they were in school, mainly due to the way it was taught. And then question number 2, I can say so many things in French now. I'm excited to travel. More clients through referrals of previous clients.
Right. I like this. I'm so excited to travel. Like that's a good direction to go into.
Okay, and that same person responded to question number 3. It says, adults mainly, perhaps teachers also who teach French.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, and then we move on. Question number 2, ability to work. problem solve. Okay, this one is cutting off. Let's see what happened here. Okay, problem solve looks like individuals are able to set themselves up, reduce disability costs, people are more comfortable and able to do their jobs, whereas before they couldn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I like it. Yeah. See if you can get even more vivid on there, but I like it so far.
Okay, next one says for a response. Okay, this person responded to all questions.
Uh-huh.
Question number 1, my clients are continuous learners with problems to keep focus.
Mm-hmm.
2, the problem solve is having guidance and motivation as they won't feel lost throughout their learning journey.
Mm.
For question 3, niche will be likely professionals with a field of work.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can I interrupt for a second? I like this new professionals, right? Because again, you're starting to get specific. I like the problem solve. You kind of said something about motivation. I like that maybe if you were to dig into that a little bit more and say, we give you, talk about, imagine having the schedule and knowing exactly like you're going to log in and start, your lessons for the day, right? So that's like a little bit more vivid, right? Being a little bit more specific. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Go on.
Okay, for question 4, the same individual, they don't have many connections outside of work and family, so they could benefit from a network of motivated workers.
Okay.
For question 5, I have a PhD in biochemical, master's in science and mechanical engineering, and much experience learning and controlling different types of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then we have motivated learners. Another individual said, I can also edit and tighten up English. For question 3, niche market, other health professionals who don't know how to do assessments or how to apply their skills, teaching individuals how to set themselves up at their workstations.
Okay.
For question 4, 5, and 6, we have a person that responded to those. Many teachers are being hired with very little capability, may be embarrassed to admit.
Mm-hmm.
For question 5, reviews, testimonials, travel, and living in French country areas. Personality is more light and fun when teaching.
Mm-hmm. That's your authority. I like it.
For 6, question 6, PP are embarrassment, time constraints.
Yeah, that's a good one. Mm-hmm. A huge pain point for a lot of people these days is overwhelm, right? Especially with moving from home, everything changing, like a huge one. If you could tap into being overwhelmed, and I think somebody's a burnout person here. If you could tap into this overwhelming feeling and really vividly describe it, that's a really big pain point at the moment.
Okay. We'll have another one that says, I also intend to teach them MS Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and help them do their job.
Okay.
Okay. And another person put, that's me. Yep. Overwhelmed is huge.
Yeah. But, okay. And maybe you could speak to the burnout coach who's here, right? But yeah, that's a really big one, right? And everybody can sort of tap into that feeling, right? Remember I said, something along the line. What did I say? Oh, think back to when you were your own ideal client. If you could describe that, oh my God, I still have this and I still have this and I can't keep up, right? If you could position your product as something that alleviates that pain, that's an example of addressing a pain point.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Let's just do one more if that's okay with you, and then we can move on. Unless that's done. That was the last one.
That's it.
Perfect timing. Thank you so much for sharing that. This is just, this is just the messaging element. We're going to move on to the actual structure, which will be a little bit quicker. But thank you so much for sharing. I hope that take a screenshot of this because this is going to help you begin to think about how you talk about your business. This isn't just for webinars. This is like for your sales. This is for networking. This is how you should be talking about your business. Answering those questions. You should be able to articulate those things. And always, I like the response that you guys are giving me, but always dig in a little bit deeper. It might be hard to do it the first time around, but then once you've written it down once, a few days later, you might be able to look at it again and say, oh, I can add this or I can add that, right? So it might take a few iterations to get like really, really deep in there, right? But let's move on. So this is your elements, messaging elements, right? So far we've learned you have to get people excited about solving their problem. You have to share your authority, whatever that might mean for you, and you have to address their pain points. Okay? And again, if you don't know people's pain points, you have to start researching or thinking back to, how you used to feel in their shoes. Okay, so now we're actually going to look at the structure, the webinar structure. And this is actually pretty quick because it's not really the magic formula, but you do want to be organized, right? Webinar structure is generally just the intro, the content, and the pitch. Okay, fairly straightforward. So the intro, as the name implies, you want to describe who you are, what they'll learn, and why they need this. Okay, who you are. So for example, I talked a little bit about who I am. This is where you can establish your authority if you want to. You can talk about, you can add a little bit of testimonials, whatever, what they'll learn, right? So people have, remember why they're here, and why they need this. This is where you can start to get people excited about solving their problem. You can really, and address the pain points. You can really dig into the pain points here and why they need this, and then start to solve it for them in the webinar. So that's, basically the intro. The intro is not very complicated. The next part is the content. You might be asking yourself, if I'm actually going to use this structure, what the heck do I actually teach these people? Okay. And my favorite, so when you're answering this, it should be about 3 to 5 points. It should be something that's new and non-obvious. If you talk about the things that everybody already knows, people are going to log out, or they won't come in the first place. So for example, if you are an accountant, and you're just talking about, oh, well, did you know that you can write off, car expenses? Everybody already, people who have a business should already know this. So they're not going to be very interested in everything else that you have to say. They're not going to stick around. Okay. So it has to be something that they might have not thought about before. Okay. If you teach something that everybody already knows, they won't show up. And also it should demonstrate your expertise, your approach, or your secret sauce, right? As you're teaching the content, this is where you actually get to showcase yourself or what it's like to work with you. So the content part is really important. And it should also lead up to your offer. If you're going to be pitching your services, it has to what you're teaching has to lead up to what you're going to be offering them, right? So for example, the person who's teaching burnout, or sorry, not burnout, but helping people with burnout, it has to kind of talk about ways to overcome burnout with, your service, being the kind of the final big hurrah, okay? So here are some ideas of how to come up with that. The common myths or misconceptions, right? This is actually my favorite place to start. If you can come up with some common myths or misconceptions. One thing you could do is you could actually start Googling your industry and start looking at, what people write and be like, no, that's not true, that's not true, that's not true. And teach these as you might think, that more sleep is good for burnout. And I'm sorry if I'm just kind of messing up your content here, but it's actually not true because of this, right? So myths and misconceptions is the easiest place to start, but you could also talk about, survey your target market and ask, what do they actually want to learn? What is it that people are always asking about? Like, oh, you're an accountant. What do I do about this? What do I put in line thing? How do I get the best, if I'm how do I mix it with my spouse or something like that, right? If there's something people are always asking you about, you could teach that in a webinar. What have people tried before that hasn't worked? Actually, that's one that I use a lot. This is kind of goes with the myths and misconceptions because I teach public speaking. I talk about all of the things that, that's the common advice, but why it hasn't worked for the people that like to talk to me. And what are some common excuses that people make in your field, right? You could also use that. You can kind of teach around that. So I want to take a moment again and brainstorm just maybe 1 minute and brainstorm some ideas for your own business. Like what can you cover in your content? And again, we're going to take the same approach of common myths or misconceptions. We're going to take the same approach of you typing in the answer. And again, Vicky, if you don't mind, we're just going to do this for 1 minute, but I do want you to start, generating some ideas. Maybe people can help you out. what are some things you could teach, you could cover in your content?
Just waiting for some responses, Maryna.
No problem. Yeah, if it's too hard to come up with right now, maybe we'll move on in about a minute, but I still want you to kind of commit to having an idea and maybe we can help you expand on it.
Okay. It says why budgets don't work, but mine does. Burnout misconception caused by the beauty industry is that burnout is only for women and it's centered around basic things like pampering
Ooh,
them.
I like it. I like both of those.
Mhm.
Okay, so for both of you who just mentioned, those are really good starting points. And see if you can expand into that and teach why maybe that's not necessarily true, or something people ask you about, or how to overcome that, or whatever it might be, right? For the person who said something about budgets, I really like that. You could talk about 3 reasons why budgets won't save you money or something like that, and you could talk about examples of budgets people set up and why maybe they haven't worked or something along those lines. I love it. Are there any more, Vicky?
Yeah, there are more.
Okay.
They have just wasted their money and time. People can just Google Translate.
Right. That's a really good one. Okay.
Yeah.
Google Translate is not the way to go for your business. I like it.
Okay, then we have myth. When I graduate, when I graduate, I will be qualified and able to apply for jobs that I want. I don't need to learn more or take more courses to get a job.
Right. Or something along the lines like, oh, I already, your qualifications are enough, right? So kind of, shortened a little bit. Okay.
Yeah. How to get out of debt.
Okay. Maybe go into a little bit more. How to get out of debt is like a little bit too broad, and it's, but maybe, go a little bit more into the things you could teach. Yeah.
Yeah. So they have how to get out of debt and stay out of debt. French, how to order in a restaurant, how to check into a hotel. People have tried Babbel, etc., without any interaction from a helpful human guide. Using neuroscience to overcome burnout. People talk about how translation is too expensive, but it's more expensive to lose clients.
Yeah, to look like you don't know what you're doing. Yeah. Okay.
My job is helping them plan their learning and do it more effectively. So people with a really bad translation, they will have a bad memory of your company.
Yeah. Okay. So can I interrupt there for a second? One thing you could say, and again, I'm assuming you're targeting kind of Canadian businesses. That for the translation person, you might be targeting Canadian businesses where they they need English and French. And you could talk about like maybe 3 things that are leaving a bad impression in your client's mind, right? So you could teach about that.
Okay. So we have, if I buy a product that says it's ergonomic, it's good for me.
Right. Okay, good. That's a good one. That's a good myth.
And says people tend to learn one thing after the other without taking the time to connect the information. Then later they feel they just wasted their money and time.
Okay, let's think about how we could we could kind of label that or teach it. Like you could treat it as a myth. Like the more I learn, or the more courses I take, for example, the more I'll know. But, then that's a myth, and you could talk about it. Well, no, if you don't actually connect the dots, or if you don't take the time to kind of, experience it or think about it, then you're not really learning, right? So, or you don't really know it, or you haven't experienced it, right? So you could treat that as a misconception.
Okay, Maryna, I think we have one more here.
Yeah.
Myth, I didn't learn any French in school, so I'm not able to learn it.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one. Or like, for example, it's too late for me to learn a new language. and be fluent in another language. That could be a myth. Like that could be a good myth to uncover. I love it. Thank you so much, guys, for sharing this. So that leads me to the last part of your structure, the pitch. The pitch. So don't leave it to assumption. Tell your audience that you want to help them solve the problem by doing business with them. Invite your prospects to work with you. In my case, I invite prospects to set up a call, the attendees, to set up a call with me, and I show them exactly how to do that. I show them, this is, click on this link, choose a time slot. I will email you, I will call you, like I walk them through the process, but don't leave it, and some people actually, push people to like the cart, like they say, click on this, and that actually buy a product. There's a little bit of a different structure for that, but I'm talking about, let's set up a call, like that kind of idea. Okay. But don't leave it to assumption. A lot of people say, well, I've already, they know that this is what I do, so I don't really want to push the sale. It's not necessarily pushing the sale. You're just telling them that you actually want to set up a call and help them solve their problem. Okay. So one of the things that people have a hard time is the transition. When you transition into the pitch, here's what you want to do. You want to summarize what they've learned. You want to recap the problem, right? Your client's problem, and maybe the pain points if you're able to. And then you want to get your audience excited to have it solved with your value proposition. You want to, frame it in a ways like, imagine if we could do this for you, by the end of the week. Okay, so here are two kind of templates. You've probably seen them before. Here are two ways to actually transition to the pitch. One of them, people kind of call it the tip of the iceberg, right? And so you might say, what you've learned so far is a really good starting point, and it'll definitely get you started. But if you really want, whatever your solution is, then here's what I can offer. You guys see how that's like a very natural, organic way to just transition into your offer, right? To start talking about your products and services, right? So for example, if, we're talking about the web designer, you could say, listen, what you've, let's say they're talking about SEO, right? SEO is search engine optimization. You could say, listen, what you've learned so far is a really good starting point and starting to get a little bit more traffic. But if you really want, tons of organic traffic, that's consistent, then you really need to start working with a professional, and here's what I can offer. So that's what kind of tip of the iceberg looks like. I hope that makes sense. Another way to transition, and you can use them together or you could use them separately, is the two options. And this one is really common. I often use it myself, and you've probably seen this before, right? And you could just say, well, now you have two options. You could, and list all the pain points. You could keep trying the same thing over and over. You could keep, taking new courses without ever, applying them. You could stay at your job and never get promoted, right? Or you could, and then get them excited. Or you could make this a one-time thing and actually work with me, and I will help you solve this problem. Okay, and again, get them excited for it, right? So this is the two options, right? You list out all the reasons, all the bad things about not working with you, and then you get people excited about actually working with you, right? That's option two, and kind of, again, lead into the sale. And if that's what you want, here's what I can offer. Again, I want to remind you, don't leave it to assumption. Tell people that you want their business. Tell them that you want to work with them. Tell people that you are here for them and how to actually make it happen. Don't say, oh, look me up, I'm around, ask me a question. Say, I want to work with you. This is how, let's set up a call. This is how I can help you. This is how I can help you with your problem. Okay, so far we've covered the structure, the intro, the content, and the pitch, and we covered some messaging elements, which are, I would say, is the 90%, right? Get them excited about solving the problem, establish your authority, and address the pain points. Now I want to move into the FAQ, and these are the questions I'm going to cover. How to add urgency, the software and tools that I use, should you go live or pre-recorded, how do you get a bigger audience, how to make it more engaging, why you should sign up with emails, and how to use testimonials. But actually, before I go into that FAQ, I wanted to ask if you have any kind of last minute or quick questions you would like me to address first that I'm not going to be covering in the FAQ. If you want to do that right now, just take a minute, type that in, and I'll have Vicky read them to me. But otherwise, we can just move on. And Vicky, just interrupt me if there's a question, but otherwise we will move on to the FAQ, the frequently asked questions.
Okay. Okay, so we have one What about if you just want to use webinar to sell a product?
Webinars to what?
To sell a product.
Oh, that's okay. So if you want to use webinars to just sell a product, usually, so that's more of a demo, right? So I completely understand that approach. That usually works if somebody has already committed to buying from you, or they have, they know exactly what you're offering, and they know exactly what you're offering, and they're already kind of, 50% there. What we're talking about here are people who are, there's a lot of competition, and they don't necessarily know you or know that they want to buy from you. Does that answer your question a little bit? If you just want to sell a product, if people are already kind of committed to you, then you can just go into a demo of how your product works, and the benefits over the features, like why it's better, why the benefits really work, things of that nature. Does that kind of answer your question? What I'm trying to cover are for people who are not necessarily sold on working with you yet, and how to actually make it a no-brainer. I hope that answers your question. Are there any other ones?
No, so far that's the only question.
Okay, that's fine. We can have another question period at the end. But I do want to kind of reiterate that this is for reaching a new. This is very helpful for reaching a new virtual audience. That's not necessarily people who are already like 99% of the way there. Okay. Okay. So we are going to move on to the FAQ. Okay. The first question I'm often asked is, how do you actually add urgency? Okay. Urgency is like an incentive to not put off, making the call, not put off doing something about it. Okay. So what people do is they add urgency or scarcity, right? And here are just a few ways that people do this. It's up to you how you want to do it, or if you want to do it, but it kind of helps people who are on the fence. It helps either go one way or the other. Right? So some people might say, listen, a consultation with me usually costs, let's say $100, but for those of you who sign up right now, while we're on this call, it's free. That's a way to add a little bit of urgency. Or everybody who signs up this week will get a bonus something, get a bonus hour with me, or get a bonus, I don't know, web page or something along those lines. Or you could say, listen, this month or this year, I can only take on 10 clients. So make sure you're one of the first ones. So you want to consider adding a little bit of urgency or scarcity to how you present your offer, right? Because a lot of the times people will see that and they get excited about it, but they're like, okay, next week, I'll definitely give myself time to think about it. But if they're on the fence, it's okay to just help push them one way or another a little bit, okay? Next, I often get asked, what software and tools do I use? So here's just a list. I used to really like Webinar Jam. I actually just canceled my subscription, but Webinar Jam is an all-inclusive software with really cool features, but it costs around $500 a year, right? So I would actually, I would suggest most people use something a little bit more affordable first, but it's something that I actually really like. You get people to sign up straight into the interface. The emails are there. It tells you who showed up, who didn't show up, and things like that. So I actually really like it. But if you're just starting out with webinars, I would definitely ask you to test it out, something a little bit more affordable first. Another affordable option is Zoom, or something similar to Zoom, right? A lot of things are popping up right now. That costs around $20 to get a month. In order to use it, but it's a way to get started. Another one is Zoho Meetings, which is what we're using right now. It's a webinar software. I don't know how much it costs. This is not my software. This is London's. But I do know that they have a free version that's pretty limited, but you can use it to get started and just see if you like it. And another thing you could do is you could use a YouTube video, record on a YouTube video and just post it on your site or send it to people. That wouldn't necessarily be live though. So that's the software and tools. Next question I'm sometimes asked, should I go live or pre-recorded? And there are pros to both. If you want to go pre-recorded, it's more convenient for you. That's a pro, right? You can do it and you can, send it to people. It allows you to leave links places, right? It allows you to leave links, on your blog or on your social media or on other people's sites, right? I told you earlier that I use media as part of my reach, right? How I get my visibility. And so I might, if the person allows me, I'll leave a link. Oh, by the way, I have a free webinar on public speaking, right? And it can be reused over and over and over again, right? So even if it's something I don't really use anymore, I can say, oh, listen, I taught this in this webinar. Why don't you check it out? And I might send it to people. So that's the pros of pre-recorded. However, I do actually really like live because, first of all, it's a little bit more dynamic. Second, it allows you to interact and ask questions and actually find out what people are thinking, what they want to know. It adds to the urgency when pitching, right? So if you have pre-recorded and you say, you can only do this week, there's no urgency there because if people know that it's not actually live, right? Whereas if it's live and you say you can only sign up with me this week, it adds that urgency. So generally I like live, but I do also use pre-recorded. Oh, and people are much more likely to show up if it's only available once, right? And if you say you can watch this anytime, people are, you get that, again, you get that sense of, oh yeah, I'll check it out, but people actually don't show up. Okay, which leads to the question, how do I actually get people to show up? Okay, so here's the answer. When you're first starting out, 99% of your job is marketing, at least for now. If you are a business owner, 99% of your job is marketing yourself. So if you can't do ads, I personally don't do ads, this is what you have to do. You have to put in the sweat work. But this is the beauty about offering something that's really, really good. You can actually get excited to tell everybody about it. Okay. When I started offering these, I was so excited to tell everybody about it. I would email people. I would I would reach out to people on LinkedIn. I would email people I've talked to once or twice. I emailed my email list. I really was excited to share this. Okay. So you can get excited to tell people about it. That's part of the marketing. Here are a few things you could try. You could use your email list if you have one. If you don't have an email list, I definitely urge you to start building one because it's really nice to be able to just email to people who are already kind of interested in what you do. Your social media, personally, I like LinkedIn. I mean, if whatever makes sense to you. Past clients, I definitely email sometimes past clients. Listen, I know we've worked before, but here's a webinar. If you don't mind passing it along to some people who might be interested. Past prospects, right? Again, people who necessarily weren't my clients, but were interested. I say, I'm teaching something new if you want to check it out. Cold connections. I sometimes reach out cold on LinkedIn and just say, no idea if you're interested, but I'll be doing a webinar on this. Sorry, your professional network, right? Through networking, your things like Eventbrite, LinkedIn. I've even seen people post it on Kijiji, post their webinars on Kijiji, and ask people with a similar audience or niche as yours. So again, like I said, if you're a lawyer, you might ask an accountant or vice versa, somebody who has the same audience as you or same clients as you, you might ask them to say, hey, if you don't mind, pass this along to anybody who might be interested. So that's like an idea of how to get people to show up to your webinar if you don't have another way to do it. Next, how do I actually make it engaging, right? So it's good to get people a little bit more interested, right? Like I said, your energy kind of dies through the screen and you have to get people a little bit more interested to work with you. You have to add enthusiasm, right? You want to slightly over-exaggerate how excited you are to offer this, right? Because like I said, your energy tends to die off, so you have to push a little bit more out of you when you are presenting online, when you're doing a webinar. First of all, and check in it with everybody if possible. So I wasn't able to do this on this call, but generally I would say, hello, John, hello, Anna, hello this, hello that. Like I would check in with everybody who is on the call if that's possible. I wasn't able to do that because I don't have the same privileges I do when I've done other webinars. Smile and stand when you present. Right now I'm not standing because I had to, change rooms at the last moment, but I definitely find that when I'm standing and when I'm smiling, I feel a lot more dynamic. I feel a lot more kind of on my feet and I can really get excited. Add interesting stories. People really like when you add stories to your webinar. And get people to respond and type in. That's what keeps it a little bit more engaging. You want to make sure people are paying attention by typing stuff in. So that's a few ways to make it engaging. And also start with a hook. That's like an interesting question or a story or an activity. At the beginning of our webinar, I asked you, what would you do if you got this email, right? And that's an example of a hook. You're getting people's gears turning. I asked you about the, the accountant. If you got an email from the accountant, right? That's a way to start getting people to think about how would they respond to something? So that's how a way to make people engaging. And also, just as a little pro tip, when you're online in webinars, text and reading are just fine, okay? That's a big no-no in public speaking when you're actually doing a presentation. But that's because you want people to be looking at your face. When people are looking at a screen, it's a little bit hard to listen and look at a thing without the face there, right? So it's okay to actually read, and the people will read along with you. So it's okay to have a little bit more text when it comes to webinars. Another point, always make attendees sign up with an email. Okay, if it's your webinar. Remember, you're building a relationship, and it doesn't necessarily end when you hit close your webinar, right? An email autoresponder allows you to send a reminder, send a follow-up. If you made a sale, send a follow-up, say, don't forget that this is closing or something like that, and get the people on your newsletter, right? You have to ask permission to get people on your newsletter, but it allows you to stay in touch for future products. The tool that I personally use is MailChimp because they have a very generous free offer, but definitely just look up how to use email autoresponders. Next, testimonials. How do you use testimonials? So you want to use testimonials as social proof, right? Create a story about the person, who they were, the person that you worked with, who they were, describe their pain points, describe how you solved the problem or what their problem was. Make it, if you can, relate it to your niche, the people that you're already talking to. Like paint the picture of that person being just like them, right? And relate that before and after. This is what their life is like now. And again, make it very descriptive. This is an example of you helping the person imagine the problem solved. So personally, when I use webinars for sales, I insert testimonials as much as possible. Now, again, we just covered my FAQ. I just want to remind you, you want to add urgency. That's an incentive to act now. You want to get people to sign up with email, just in case you forgot. Live webinars get people to commit a little bit more. You want to use testimonials as social proof. And it's easier to market yourself if you can get excited about what you're offering, right? That's why webinars are so great. I'm actually excited to offer this. I'm really happy to be able to offer this. Okay, I just want to recap. What I promised earlier is that by the end of this workshop, you'll have a step-by-step blueprint, right? That's your webinar structure, and concrete tools and strategies to create your own engaging value pack webinar and use it to get clients, right? So the concrete tools and strategies are the FAQ I just covered, as well as the messaging tools, right? Getting people excited, establishing your authority, and addressing pain points. Okay, so what's next for you is all I'm asking is I just want you to commit to using this or trying this for your own business and just to get the ball rolling and see how it can impact you and how it can impact your business. I'm actually going to leave. I'm going to give a few minutes at the end for questions, but I want to, for those of you who have to go right now, I want to give a huge thank you for everybody who showed up, for investing this hour and a half in to learn, to improve your business. And I want to give a huge thank you to the London Business Enterprise, and especially Vicky, for sitting with me and answering those or helping me with the questions and putting this out for you. So if you want to connect with me, my name is Maryna Schwartz. I'm good on LinkedIn. Just tell me where you know me from, that you know me from the London thing, or you can go to my website and join my newsletter, but actually talk a little bit more about public speaking rather than business there. But I'm actually going to open it up to questions at this point. So I want to say a huge thank you. And for anybody who has a question that's specific to their business or about anything you just covered, I want to open it up for those. Thank you. Ooh. Any questions? Sorry, and again, Vicky, I'm just going to tell you, I can't see the Q&A still, so I'm going to need to rely on you.
Sure, and Maryna, before others leave, we want to thank you again for dedicating your time to today's webinar. I'm sure that everyone got a lot of pointers on how to reach and sell using webinars. I certainly, for myself, did learn a lot too. Thanks very much for that. And we want to thank everyone that signed up for today's webinar. Thanks for joining us. I will be leaving my email address. I'll be placing it in the chat so that you guys can have it. If you need further consultation services, you can always contact me at that email address. Okay, Maryna, so we do have some questions.